Welcome to the Bharatvaarta Weekly. Thank you so much for choosing to skip the news and watch the weekly instead. So this week we have Abhishek Paul joining us in place of Srivatsa Subbana, who is off on some very pressing duties. And as usual, I have my friend Ashish Chandorkar as well. Hi Abhishek, hi Ashish. How are you guys doing?
Hi Roshan, hi Ashish, doing good.
Hey, Carrie, yeah, doing good.
Nice and cold morning in Bangalore, as I often say. So beautiful weather here. Plenty to cover in terms of news and events. But before that, let's do a quick review of the episodes we put out last week. We did 3 episodes, in fact, last week, and all of them pretty good, I would say. So the GHMC polls was an interesting one, right? I never thought that we'd be able to talk for close to an hour about a municipal election, but then Sudhir and Rohit did a fantastic job in explaining the significance of the polls, right? And I think it could be a milestone moment for politics in the region, in Telangana especially. Ashish, what do you think about the Urban Rural podcast with Abhinav and Rohit?
Fascinating episode. Both Abhinav and Rohit have always got some very unique insights, and the way they analyze Indian politics is something to really follow very closely. And the points made, of course, this podcast was specifically in the context of the ongoing farmer agitation. But the way they kind of contextualize the macro picture, the fact that Indian politics is kind of captured by rural interests while the country is rapidly urbanizing, and how that schism is not good for the country, where the the folks living in cities don't participate enough, while the policies then keep getting skewed towards the rural part of the country. That was quite fascinating. I think it's a must watch podcast for anyone who's interested in Indian politics.
Right. So Abhishek, what do you think about the Indian stock markets one?
Yeah, so I thought it was a really very educative and insightful episode. Both Ashish and Govind kind of did a back to basics approach, right, in building grounds up in terms of what are the asset classes where people can invest. And one of the important things that they stressed was that people need to keep the goals that they have in mind, right, while investing. So, you talked about how technology is making things easier, but then technology cannot be a substitute for strategic thinking. Was very well brought out by them, right? So I think it's definitely another must-watch episode, especially for those who have an interest in investing in the stock markets directly, or mutual funds, or even other instruments.
Right. All right, let's move on to the first piece of news from last week. So Prime Minister Modi laid the foundation stone for the new parliament building on Thursday. This new building will cover 64,500 square feet and will cost an estimated 971 crore rupees. It will integrate modern audio-visual communication systems, smart voting, and biometrics in meeting halls. The building will begin construction by Tata Projects and is slated to be complete by India's 75th Independence Day in 2022. Ashish, a lot of talk about the design and everything around it. What do you think about this?
Yeah, Carrie, the Central Vista project, which is a all-encompassing project, which includes the Central Vista itself, the new parliament, which is slated to completed by March 2022, as you mentioned. The Vista will complete by November of next year. And then, of course, the Common Central Secretariat, which is part of the project, which is March 2024 deadline. All of this is being packaged into one redevelopment project, which has been currently under litigation, actually. I mean, Supreme Court has yet to kind of give a go-ahead on the ongoing judicial process there. But quite a poignant day to discuss this. This today is also the 19th anniversary of the attack on Indian Parliament of 2001. In fact, the Prime Minister is paying tribute to the people who laid their lives in that attack right now as we are live. Uh, of course, he did the Bhumi Pujan on Thursday. Seems like a year of Bhumi Pujans for the PM. Two big ones this year. The new parliament will have expanded capacity for both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, which is actually an indication of the fact that India will at some point go for delimitation, the delimitation. Currently, I mean, most of our constituencies are sized as per the 1971 census, with some redrawing happened in 2008, but not a lot. But the delimitation which was supposed to happen in 2002, there was a act which was passed by the parliament then to move it to 2020 to the next census after 2026, which is in 2031. But this act will have to be repealed to increase the size of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha in the coming years, and a new act would have had to be passed. But the new building will have a capacity for 888 members in Lok Sabha, 384 in Rajya Sabha, and the Lok Sabha hall will seat 1272 members, where all the joint sessions can be held, typically which happens at the start of a new parliament session. The theme of the two houses will vary. Lok Sabha will look like the national bird, which is peacock, and the Rajya Sabha will look like the national flower, which is lotus. So pretty important moment, because this also lays to rest the rumors which keep coming up that Indian capital should move out of Delhi. I mean, clearly that's not happening anytime soon. And the fact that some of the new architecture will have an Indian imprint. This is quite interesting, because when the original parliament was built, the parliament was actually only sanctioned in 1919 after the Government of India Act was passed by the British, and they wanted to give Indians more participation in the governance. But the context of the Delhi development, which is in the capital move from Calcutta to Delhi, was in 1911, when King George V announced the shifting of this capital. So at that time, Carrie, Lord Hardinge, who was the viceroy then, had this issue around what kind of architecture should the Delhi buildings follow. He was actually one of the proponents to say that there should be an Indic touch to the architecture, which is that Indian imprints should be there on the buildings. But surprisingly, the guy who actually opposed that thought was actually Lutyens, Edwin Lutyens, who had then flown in 1912 to create the modern Delhi as we see it today, and under whose name is abused every day by in the Indian social media as a moniker of Lutyens Delhi. But he was quite opposed to it. Apparently, when he landed in India, he wrote a letter to his wife saying there's nothing called Indian architecture. It is all useless type of buildings. It's all a hodgepodge, and hence the Europeans need to teach the Indians how to build buildings. Thankfully, Lord Hardinge then asked him and the other architect, which was Herbert Baker, to go to various parts of North India. Apparently, they visited cities like Lahore, Lucknow, Kanpur, Indore, Mandu, and they realized that there was something which they can, some ideas which they could borrow, and all of that then reflected in the Lutyens Delhi buildings and also the parliament. The parliament, as we know today, it resembles a replica of the. It looks like a replica of the Chauset Yogini temple, which is in the Mitavli village near Gwalior in MP. And I think that could be a coincidence, because there's no record of the either architect Lutyens or Baker actually visiting Mitavli, but nonetheless there's a striking resemblance. And to give it to the Madhya Pradesh folks, because we never shy away from taking credit even when it is not due. Apparently the new parliament design looks like the Vijay Mandir in Vidisha, which is also a very important temple in the local folklore. So if you see social media, etc., the folks of MP are already claiming that the new design also is based on another MP architecture, like a striking architecture. So I'm not sure if that's true. Again, there's no record of Tata Projects having visited Vidisha for the design, or any of the folks who did the actual the civil design going to Vidisha. But nonetheless, that's the rumor in the local circles. But let's see how this project comes up. Pretty important for the expansion of. I think that's the headline story, that it is quite important for the expansion of the seats in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, which would then change the politics. And of course, this will undergo a huge debate in terms of how the delimitation should happen. There'll be allegations of what happens in US around the constituencies being drawn as per the quote unquote convenience of the government, of the ruling party. But I think this will then become a very key debate in the years to come, in the next 3-4 years to come.
Right. And here I thought we can shake on both Bangalore and Indore being out of contention for the next capital. Right. So we might soon see public Wi-Fi access all over the country, thanks to a new undertaking known as the PM-WANI. or the Wi-Fi access network interface. I don't know who comes up with these acronyms, but that person is really killing it. I mean, amazing. Uh, so this network will function using public data offices throughout the country. An application will be deployed to register users and discover WANI compliant hotspots in their vicinity. Companies like Facebook and Google have tried earlier and failed to offer public Wi-Fi services in India and elsewhere. Abhishek, what do you think about the PM-WANI program? I mean, considering that data consumption is on the rise and we have one of the highest in the world, I suppose, right? So, what do you think about this?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting initiative that has been undertaken now. Uh, Before we sort of get into this particular initiative, it's important to step back and think of it in terms of part of Digital India and also part of the end user sort of use case of the whole BharatNet initiative, right? Where all our panchayats and villages are being, connected with optical fiber, right? So now there was a policy document sometime in 2018 called the National Digital Communication Policy. And there they had envisaged that by 2020, India would have 50 lakh Wi-Fi hotspots and about 1 crore Wi-Fi hotspots by 2022. Now, nothing like that actually took place, right? We are barely at about 1 to 2 lakhs, somewhere there. And the only places where you see public Wi-Fi hotspots today are basically airports, or as you said, Google had done the initiative for the railway stations, right? Incidentally, Google has now sort of stepped back out of that, and they're kind of allowing RailNet to take it over. With Google, when they sort of stepped back, they said that with uh, the mobile networks and 4G and all that becoming so prevalent and cheap that perhaps the use case was no longer there for India, right? So now when we talk, and if you see the news items, PM-WANI talks about, the news often talks about free, Wi-Fi hotspots to sort of come up everywhere. So that's not exactly what is going to happen, right? So it's not a grand scheme of making entire cities have government paid for Wi-Fi, right? Like which some other countries outside India have. Like, for example, Seoul in South Korea is undertaking such an initiative where the entire city would be like a Wi-Fi hotspot. But the important thing to note is that in outside India, the data charges are significantly higher, right? While in India, the thanks to Geo mainly, data is very cheap and is already consumed a lot. And if you look at some of the debates that have happened on this topic in the past in India, obviously telcos have been of the view that public Wi-Fi's are not safe, etc. Right? There are security challenges and so on, but basically been kind of against this because this is kind of competing against their own product, right? So what really this initiative will do is, this is so when you talked about it, the interesting term that you used was PDO, right? Public Data Office. So the government is envisaging it in sync with what happened 30 years ago with PCOs, right? So any small shop or a kiosk or perhaps a new entrepreneur can today enroll themselves on this platform and open a PDO, right? A public data office, which will then allow hotspot, which will create a hotspot for that locality. And then people can sort of do a one-time eKYC and then start buying Wi-Fi access in very small sort of sachet kind of quantities, right? So you can take it for a very small limited period of time or a limited amount of data and then use that, right? So where this could be really interesting and useful is in the rural and semi-urban areas where your 4G coverage, etc., is not so great, or it could be very useful for people who are yet not really big users of 4G, or do not, let's say, have a home broadband connection because it's too costly, right? Because you can use this Wi-Fi for a limited period of time, pay as you go kind of a thing, right? And then what will happen is, let's say you are in a sort of small town, and you can buy this sort of small packet of Wi-Fi access for, let's say, a week, and then you can use it across multiple hotspots in that town, right? So that's a use case. Now, there have been companies which have sort of developed this in the recent past. There's an article on Wi-Fi Dabba, an organization who has tried this out, right? So, the charges are to be as low as rupees 2 or rupees 5 or rupees 10, right? Instead of your 800 rupees or 1000 rupees monthly, packet monthly connection that you buy at home. For youngsters or people in the lower income category to access Wi-Fi for limited use cases, this could be really useful. And again, think of it in such a way, right? So suppose you are in a particular street where this is now enabled, your adjoining Darshini now becomes as attractive as your Starbucks, right? Because your folks can, sort of now access Wi-Fi sitting around these locations while having, tea and all, tea, coffee and all that, right? So the jugaad that we will see around this, the innovation that will come around this will be immense if you look at it from a local grounds up level. So interesting to see, but of course the skepticism around that will also remain in terms of A, how fast and how much it will grow, and B, because India has already, low charges for 4G data.
Fantastic. All right, moving on. The Congress took another big blow with BJP's win in the Rajasthan local body elections. BJP won 1989 seats in the Panchayat Samiti elections, while Congress won 1852. BJP also held an absolute majority in the Panchayat Samiti and Zilla Parishad election as well. The Congress in Rajasthan is currently undergoing a power struggle between Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot and Sachin Pilot. Ashish, another election and another loss for the Congress. Ashish, you're on mute.
I did realize this, but
Yeah.
obviously you. So, pretty interesting election result, especially in the context of the ongoing farmer agitation. These polls were all held in rural parts of Rajasthan, where farmers aren't rich compared to their counterparts in, let's say, Haryana or Punjab. So the fact that that obviously wasn't an issue is a good commentary on the limitations of the agitation itself. It has also happened for the first time in 15 years in Rajasthan. The ruling party will have lesser members in rural local bodies than the opposition. Typically, the ruling party always has an upper hand because the expectation is that these polls will then the results will then align with the state government in terms of getting financial grants and wielding power and so on. So quite a big blow for the Congress in that sense. BJP won about 46% of the village seats compared to 42% of Congress, and then in the Zilla Parishad, BJP won 56% of the seats compared to just 40% of the Congress seats. BJP would take majority in 13 districts and Congress in 5. Although there, in several parts where Congress is strong, like Jodhpur, Dausa, Alwar, Jaipur, the eastern part of Rajasthan, I think the elections did not take place in those parts. So I think that's kind of one excuse for Congress, but also correspondingly, the elections also did not take place in parts where BJP is strong, like in Baran and Dholpur, etc. So I guess that kind of balances out the view, and this will certainly fasten or increase the internal issues of Congress in the state, while BJP is actually patching up, getting its older leaders back in the fold, like Ghanshyam Tiwari yesterday joined back in the presence of Satish Punia, who's the state president. So BJP seems to be consolidating in the state, while Congress is still in a bit of a spot of bother there. Also, the interesting case was that was the Bharatpur, in the Dungarpur Zilla Parishad, where Congress and BJP got together to force out BTP, which is the Bharatiya Tribal Party. They couldn't get their president there, as both Congress and BJP voted for a BJP backed independent candidate. The BTP, which has been supporting the Gehlot government, has actually taken away the support from the state government. Also BJP has a problem because the RLP, which is the rural party, which is very strong in a few districts. So they are now threatening to pull out of the NDA because of course, the pretext is the farmer agitation, but then the issue also is that the voter base is quite anti-BJP in that sense historically, although the 2019 alliance played out well. But so both from an alliance perspective, both Congress and BJP have an issue. But I think overall, more food for thought for the Congress, especially in a strong state.
Right, as always. So, moving on, real estate sales in the Mumbai metropolitan region touched record highs in November. Data from the Department of Registration and Stamps showed that the sales jumped by 112% from August to September. October saw sales touch record highs, higher than those before the pandemic, while November saw the highest number of sales since 2012. The stamp duty on new apartments was slashed from 5% to 2% in September, which seems to have prompted a rise in apartment sales. Ashish, people seem to be spending.
Yeah, seems like the Mumbai real estate is quite hot right now. The year, almost 9,300 apartments have been sold till November this year, which is like a 9-year high. The registration in November was 17% higher than October and 67% year on year, which is last November. Clearly, the stamp duty cuts by the government have catalyzed this. The structure is that there's a 3% reduction from 1st September till 31st December this year, and then a 2% reduction between Jan to March next year. And in the current scheme, the other 2% is also being absorbed by the builders in most cases. So basically, there's no stamp duty per se. Plus, there are discounts of 10 to 15%. So a lot of people are buying properties which are 15 to 20% lower than their otherwise listed prices in Mumbai, which is like a sharp reduction of prices, which people have been asking for several years. So as such, overall, the proposition is quite strong for the buyers. Also, the revival carry was not just in November, but it started actually way back in June, where after the slump in May due to the lockdown, I think every month since June has shown an increase. October, of course, peaked at 7,929 units, which was the highest till then in the year, and then November actually beat that figure. So both, the festive season, Dashera as well as Diwali, has been pretty strong for the industry. The growth in real estate is critical because this is one of the areas of high employment. This is also where the migrant labor works. So which means if the industry is doing well, then the labor will come back to Mumbai. So I think all in all, pretty strong sign for the economy, national economy also in general. Also, there's another proposal in front of the BMC to cut 50% of the premium cess and levies which are put on the transfer of development rights as well as on the FSI, which is sanctioned for the builders. So this has been agreed in the BMC by all the 8 parties which have got seats in the House. The state government is yet to approve the proposal because it will lead to some loss of revenue. But nonetheless, if this also comes through, then the project prices will decline further, meaning the input costs will decline further, and there will be more room for discounts offered by the builders. So if this continues for another, let's say, a year or so, or 6 months or so, that would be a good studying of the ship for the industry, and of course will help clear the backlog of inventory in Mumbai, which can then help new projects finally getting launched. So all in all, a good sign of revival for Mumbai, for the state of Maharashtra, and for India as a whole.
Awesome. The Karnataka government has removed restrictions on buying farmland. The Land Reforms Amendment was passed in the Legislative Council by 37 votes to 21. 9 Congress MLAs were absent. The Congress MLAs had earlier staged a walkout in September when the bill was tabled, saying the bill would destroy the rural economy, quote unquote. The act removes all restrictions on buying land, opening up the path for industrialists to directly purchase land from farmers. Abhishek, your farming ambitions are now open to, the Karnataka government has stepped out of the way, right?
Yeah, so another interesting development, standalone itself, it's quite a big change, but in the overall climate that we have right now, in terms of the farmer protests and all, this is one more interesting chapter in the whole debate that is happening in the country, right? So, to summarize, what these changes do is basically there is this 1961 Act called the Karnataka Land Reforms Act, in which the sale of land to someone, sale of agricultural land to another party was very stringently controlled. According to the original act, your income had to be less than rupees 2 lakhs per year for you to be able to buy farmland. That was amended sometime in 2015 to make it an annual income of 25 lakhs, right? You had to be below that. Secondly, you had to have an occupation of uh, being in the agriculture occupation itself to be able to buy farmland, right? And then you had to be an in-state person, right? And then there were certain upper cap limits that one person or one family could not have more than X number of acres to themselves, right? So these are some of the restrictions that are being removed, which means that you can be a migrant to the state and still, purchase land. Your income need not be lower than 25 lakhs. So basically, now non-farmers and non-Karnataka people as well. So basically, and
Techies, basically.
also uh, techies and more importantly corporates who are getting into the agri business, etc., can do that, can purchase land. So, of course, one of the things which is important is that having such kind of stringent regulations only meant more corruption scope, right? Because then people today also would try to buy, but using, bribing their way to show a family tree in which someone belongs to the state or someone has done agriculture in the past and all those kind of things, right? Or forging an income certificate, right? So these kind of regulations end up basically only increasing corruption as people try to circumvent around these laws. That's one thing. The second is, of course, I would say that definitely welcome opening up this sector to more investment, and that should basically lead to better usage of land and so on, and farmers too should get good prices as per the rates available, right? Of course there is criticism from the opposition, but that criticism is kind of part of the standard criticism of any reform that is happening, that corporates are bad, poor farmers will get exploited and so on. I mean, you can only counter these with so much because this is all very emotional and rhetorical opposition, right? But I would say that this is a welcome change.
Okay, fantastic. Moving on to the last bit of news that we want to cover. The NHRCL invited bids for a survey of 2,365 kilometers of high speed rail lines. The statement called for bids to conduct ridership study for all new rail lines. The scope of the survey includes data collection and traffic study for public transport in India. The press release also mentioned that the Indian Railways has procured all required clearances from the Ahmedabad Mumbai high speed rail corridor. Abhishek, we're running out of time, so quick comments from you.
Yeah, so 6 of the routes are going to be part of this 2365 kilometers. And one of the interesting things is that they're going to use what is known as LIDAR, light detection and ranging survey for some of them. I think it's already been cleared for Delhi, Varanasi. So what will happen is you'll have helicopters going around and using those techniques to sort of do a very detailed survey of the land uh, and the routes there. And yeah, using technology, I think the time crunch, the project timelines will get crunched significantly. So I think right now only about 180 days has been given. So that's a really fast turnaround time for this initiative.
All right, fantastic. So we have a couple of amazing episodes coming up next week. We have Kaushalji and Niveditaji talking about the representation of Indian culture in mainstream arts. This was the longest podcast we recorded all of this year. It went on for 2 hours, and it could have well gone on for another 2 hours. If not for the time restrictions that we had that day. And then Ashish, we have the Bangladesh Liberation War of 1971. I know that you have a deep interest in this as well. So what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I think a lot of stories. This war had a lot of, let's say, the smaller segments which were more interesting. Things happened on on 3rd, 4th December, on 11th December, etc. A lot of stories around those events. So look forward to detailing of some of that. And Mohal is an expert on the military history, so look
Yeah.
forward for his debut on Bharatvaarta.
Yeah. No, it was amazing. They lent a lot of color and perspective to all of the events that happened. I mean, I don't know who said it, but revolutions look impossible at the beginning and then inevitable at the end. But there is just so much that happens, right? And Adit and Mohal did a fantastic job of, explaining all these various nuances. All right, folks, that's it from us at Bharatvaarta. From Abhishek and Ashish, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for choosing to skip the news and watch the weekly. So the weekly is a weekly digest of all of the news and events. Join us next Sunday as well, and hope to see you soon. Take care, stay safe, and enjoy yourself.